Evening, everybody. This is our first Warrant and Finance Committee meeting. It's September 27th, 2021 at 6:03. The first order of business is the salute the flag. Pledge of allegiance.
The United States of America.
To the
of
republic.
the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Sorry, Dennis.
And I apologize for my hat off.
Gotcha.
But I'm not wearing my old Trump hat, so we shouldn't have any emails or anything about my attire. With that being said, first thing I'd like to do is welcome everybody. We have 5 new members this year. And I'd like for everybody to introduce themselves for those of you that doesn't know everybody. Go ahead, Ronald, start on you.
You're gonna start on me?
Yep.
You're picking on me, Dennis.
Yep.
Roland Waterhouse. I've been on Warrant and Finance now for, I don't know, about 8 years. Retired and kind of fed up. I'm done.
I'm Bernard Broder. I'm new. Look forward to getting to know everybody and working together.
Joyce Bakshi, new to this committee. Glad to be here.
As you all know, Dennis Long. That's all I'm gonna say about myself.
Leslie Berland, this is my first year on this committee.
And I'm Tom McGurty. This is my first year on the committee.
Tucker Pearson, I was formerly an alternate, and I'm a voting member this year.
Joseph Rumben, I'm an alternate, and this is my first year.
So the first point of business is to elect a chair.
I nominate Dennis Long.
Second,
Anybody else? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Next thing is to elect a vice chair. Have nominations, please.
nominate Leslie Berlin.
Second.
Any other nominations? Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
The next thing is a secretary, but before we make a motion on that, I'd like to give a little explanation of past practices when it comes to the secretary. For many years, many years, the selectmen supplied the Warrant Finance Committee with a secretary, which was Lorraine Yetton. And when she stepped down from doing that, they hired somebody to come in and do the minutes for quite a few years. And then about 10 years ago, the board decided that we could do the secretarial stuff ourselves in committee. So that's what we did until last year. I believe it was last year, wasn't it, Tucker? Tucker brought this up, and the board agreed that it's hard to be a secretary and participate in the meeting. So what we decided was, and we voted, that the video would be our minutes of our meeting. So the secretary wouldn't have to spend most of the time writing and not paying attention really to partake in the conversation, which I think is a good idea. It saves a lot of work. It saves a lot of, if anybody has any questions on how something happened, all they have to do is watch the video. But with that being said, my technical skills are limited to what my grandchildren can show me what to do. I try very hard to send emails out to everybody and this and that, but sometimes there's things that need to be done that I'm not capable of doing. And I've always had somebody that would help me out with this. Ani Murray was a great help in the past, he's a former member. Tom Gore was. So for limited services, I would like to see us have a secretary. Somebody I can go to and ask them to do stuff that I can't. So what's your thoughts?
I agree. I agree that the video should be our minutes. And it's very difficult to take minutes
Yeah.
and to participate. But I also understand that there are some functions that we do need call it a secretary for.
Right.
So I'm in complete agreement with the limited role.
When there were minutes, I'm sorry, did I
No,
interrupt you?
go ahead.
No, I was finished now.
When there were minutes, are they posted someplace, or how are they made available?
Yes, they were. They used to be on the town's website,
I see.
but when we got the COVID stuff, things really,
It fell apart?
everything kind of fell apart. The committee obviously had a copy of the minutes for the next meeting. Where you can watch these meetings on either APAT or on YouTube, lots of times, at least people that talk to me, it's easier to do that than it is to get on the town's website and find information sometimes.
There's also no bias in, with minutes. That, you watch the video, you see exactly what was said and what happened, where, and everyone has a bias and take minutes, and you're always gonna get that little bit of, whatever word you want to attach to it. So I think actually watching what transpired, I think is more beneficial.
There's no two records of it, so there's no conflict between the two if you only have one, but I could certainly see where we tried it last year, Dennis, a lot of that gap of not having a secretary fell in your lap unknowingly when we made that
Right.
decision,
And we did the best we could do,
Yep.
or at least I did. What do you think, Joe?
Are you gonna pay the secretary?
No.
Are you gonna wear a skirt, Joe?
I think Joe's not going to volunteer.
No, would it have to be a secretary as a member of this group, or would it have to be somebody else?
It would be a member of the committee. Yeah.
Is the chair open for a motion?
Unless somebody else has something they want to say.
I'd like to ask, I guess, one of the questions I have about using the video for your total record is if a question comes up about something, how do you know what date it was decided and what I've never heard of not having a written, how do we approve minutes from a previous meeting if we don't even review them?
We don't need to. You can review them if you want on the video, but the law is
Yeah.
very clear that you can use the video for your minutes. You don't have to have a handwritten.
And it doesn't call for, the statute doesn't call for minutes, it calls for a
Excuse me 1
record.
minute. Virginia needs,
Excuse me for interjecting, but I would agree with the secretary, just because if we have technical difficulty, you know what I mean? Not that I'm
Yeah,
planning on it, but you don't know.
right.
So,
And
I don't
I-
want you to always count on this, I mean, 99%, but there's always that 1%.
Right.
Yes.
Would
Things
it,
happen, no voice, the audio went.
Right. Joyce?
was there any issues like that last year?
No, not that I know of. Everything was fine.
I'm just saying.
No, you always know that the one that you want is going to be the one that has a glitch.
Yes.
You know, like no audio, no something like that. That's always going to happen. Would the board consider simultaneously recording our meetings?
I'm fine with that.
You're talking about audio recording?
Yes,
Yes.
I don't have a problem with that.
right, that would suffice. Any issues?
Yeah, I
Then we'd
mean,
have two things
Now, how are you going to record it?
with a tape recorder.
With a tape recorder.
Do we have a tape recorder available for our utilization?
Yeah.
Who would like to be in charge of said recording?
Well, I think that would, again, would fall to our secretary. Ultimately, I guess it'd be the chair's responsibility, but, so that being said, it sounds like we'd like to have a secretary, or at least I would, but not bury him in work. Tom?
Would it make sense to have written down the votes?
Oh, yes.
If we take a vote, to have a written record of
Yeah.
that. But the conversation and dialogue around that, I guess we could rely on the
Yeah.
video and/or the backup.
And that's what we've done in the past.
Okay, all right.
Anything that we're voting on, it's always been recorded in writing.
All right.
And then it goes to the town administrator, and she does her work. Joyce?
I would suggest in that case, I agree with Tom, from past experience, you have a motion sheet on the table. Because when you take actual minutes, you need, who's there, who's not here? What motion was made? Did it pass, fail, or what was? It is not necessary to have discussion around it. It's not necessary to have any of those things that sometimes you see minutes that are 8 or 10 pages long, and only 3 motions were ever made at that particular meeting. That's all you need.
You're exactly right. When you, and this is one problem we've had, I think, is the expectations of what the minutes are. What Joyce is 100% right. What the minutes should be is whatever actions was taken at the meeting. Not every word for word what Dennis Long said, because then it'd be 18 pages. You know, discussion, and I've noticed on the other boards I've been on, I'll use the planning board, for example, the intent of the minutes were always right, but there's always something that I didn't use that word, I used that word. You know what I mean? So that much detail, as far as I'm concerned, is a pain.
and that's where the bias comes in.
And that's where the bias comes in.
Absolutely.
So with that being said, I guess we will have a secretary, and we'll just do the actions, record the actions of the committee. Does that make sense to everybody? So I'll open up nominations for secretary.
I'll nominate Joyce.
Second.
I don't hear Joe jumping up and down, saying he wants a job.
Said Joyce, not Joey.
All in favor? And it's unanimous.
Hey, then I have to warn you all that I did the agenda for this meeting, and I already got the first thing wrong on it, the date. Had to correct it by pencil. And I will tell you this, and I throw myself at the mercy of this committee. I've been working for 3 days to get my email.
I wasn't going to talk about that in a
Oh,
minute,
good,
Joyce.
because I have
My problem is I've lost my agenda already and haven't gone.
I cannot, it now has my husband
I got it.
pulling his hair out if he had any hair left, and he doesn't. So I will get it, I'll work on it, but if anybody needs me, as far as I'm concerned, until I get the Warrant and Finance email, use my email.
Thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
First thing is, I try, and the committee voted to do this, to run underneath Robert's rules. I passed that out, I think, to everybody. The simplified version. It seemed to work very well in the past. The alternates obviously aren't voting members unless somebody is absent. And the way I've done it in the past is alternate, if we need one of the alternates to vote, alternate meetings on the alternate to be able to vote. With that being said, though, it's very important, whether you're an alternate or not, to voice your opinion, ask questions. And I will tell you that anything that I do as chair, if anybody has any questions about it, or procedural thing or whatever, I encourage everybody to speak up, because everybody on this committee has an equal voice. As a chair, all I'm doing is running the meeting, and I'm running the meeting the way this committee wants me to run the meeting.
Excuse me,
Go ahead.
just for clarity's sake, would you identify the alternate members of Warrant and Finance? Joe Ruma is one.
And I believe, Bernie, you're an alternate.
I don't think so.
Okay,
If I am, somebody needs to tell me.
okay.
But I don't believe I
We
am.
need to make sure that we have
I thought he was voted in.
correctly identified the
Exactly.
seated board members
You know,
as, seated board members and the alternates as alternates. I'm not throwing any rocks at anybody.
No.
By any means. It's just a matter of,
it's a procedural issue, that's all.
that's it. So if we don't know for sure, then you need to get in touch with the town administrator to identify.
Yeah, I will.
Thank you.
I will. And I apologize for
Problem.
not knowing that. I thought Joe and Bernie was, but I could very well be wrong.
I suspect if you were, I'm sorry,
ahead, Tom.
what's the procedure? Do you raise your hand?
Yes, and
Okay.
I'll call on you, Tom.
Very good. I believe if you were a seated member, you were probably sworn in. Was that done?
Well, and alternates are appointed, not elected, correct?
No.
Alternates are elected,
You're elected as well.
and you'll be sworn in as an alternate.
Oh, you are? Okay.
All right. Well, I think we need to check with
Yeah,
town administrator or review the town meeting, but
yeah. Oh, the copy that you got, Bernie, when you got sworn in.
Right.
Would say an alternate on it, if that's
Yep.
what it is.
I'll double check. It's possible.
But I can still, I'll check with
Anything's possible.
the town administrator. You see, I passed out last year, or maybe it was 2 years ago now, I don't know. The Warrant and Finance Committee created a mission statement. I cheated quite a bit on that because I really got a lot of this from one of the school's mission statement, because I thought it sounded so good, so I thought it'd be good for us. So that's our mission statement. Give you a second to read it and see if you have any concerns, because we can always change it. This is a new board, and
I have a question to ask.
What?
That last cross, the cross out on the very bottom, that's gone, right? To the best of our ability?
I might have crossed that out myself, just to cover myself, so that, in case I was being lazy about something, I don't know.
On that same last bullet, acting in the best interest of the town, do you need meeting, or is it just the town?
We represent the town meeting.
Town meeting.
Oh,
So you
okay.
probably could do away with the word "the" in front of town,
Okay,
because we answer to town meeting.
okay,
But you guys can look at this, and at our next meeting, we can,
okay.
it's something to work with.
It's interesting to know that. I wasn't aware
Yeah,
of that,
no,
so.
we're accountable to town meeting, that's
Very good.
who elected
Thank
us, and they're the ones that govern us.
So
There
we
is
don't
a-
answer to the selectmen.
There is
I get it.
an ordinance, the creation of the Warrant and Finance Committee that was redone back in 2011. I apologize for not making copies of everything tonight, but my printer ran out of ink. So I was gonna have all this stuff for you guys, but I don't have it. But the Warrant and Finance Committee ordinance was redone in 2011, and it tells us what our roles and responsibilities are. We are a independent committee. We're not under the auspices of the selectmen. The only ones that have authority over us is the town meeting.
I see.
And obviously, we try to work closely and respectfully with the Board of Selectmen and the town administrator. But we work for them, and they're the ones that say who they want on it. And if we don't do things right, the way they see fit, then they'll put somebody else on it and not re-elect you. And I think that's very important, that we know that we're accountable to the town meeting. That's why we're here, to give them advice.
Thank you.
Dennis?
Yes, sorry, Joyce.
In our mission statement, I might be confusing between what our responsibilities are and what our mission statement is, but shouldn't there be something saying that is our mission to review every article that is on the warrant and give an unbiased yay or nay on it?
And that's another ordinance.
But that doesn't go in our mission statement.
I don't know. I'm not that.
It doesn't matter?
I'm not that technically, whatever.
It's in the ordinance?
It's in the
That
ordinance,
form the committee?
yeah, what our responsibilities are.
Very specific. The ordinance is very, very specific as to what the, excuse me,
We vote on the warrant, all warrant articles, whether they're financial or whether it be through the planning office, any warrant. We vote on all the articles. Obviously, the finance end of it is the biggest impact. But I also have this, and I don't have it for anybody else. We also develop, and it might be in there, his piece of paper here, Joyce, the purpose of the warrant and finance. And this is more or less our guideline on the roles of the different people on the board, how to deal with things. Then we had standard operating procedures, so that everybody understood how the process worked. The roles we've already discussed really with the chair and the vice chair and the secretary. But I'll read this and I'll make sure everybody has it for next time we have a meeting. The committee meeting shall follow the abbreviated Robert's Rules of Order. The committee shall set its own agenda, coordinated by the chair. The committee shall make every effort to consult with municipal officers and officials as it deems necessary to fulfill its obligation to the town meeting. The committee shall present any legal questions to the town administrator to put forth to MMA via the chair. The committee shall conduct any and all business in public forum and strictly adherence to the state of Maine's freedom of information. All alternate members shall have a voice at every meeting, even when not a voting member. The committee shall require 5 business days to review all warrants before taking a vote, with the exception of extraordinary circumstances. The committee shall strictly adhere to using the town's email server for communication regarding Warrant and Finance Committee matters. The committee members must act as part of the committee body when representing the committee. Members must not act or claim to represent the committee without consent of the committee chair. This is kind of like, we did this so that everybody was on the same page on how we were operating as a committee. And again, this was last year, and when any committee comes up with a set of rules, it expires at the end of that fiscal year, because you got different members and they might want different rules. But I'll probably, what I do is, and this is one example I was talking about, a secretary. I'll probably give this to the secretary, and I know with her wisdom, she can scan it and send it out to everybody. That way there, before our next meeting, everybody can look at it and pick it apart or whatever you want to do, so that at our next meeting, we can hopefully adopt this. And I think it really clarifies a lot of everybody going in different directions. Now, when it comes to the email, I think everybody is on there except for you, Joe. And I didn't explain it very well to you, Joe, when I was talking to you, how that Warrant Finance Committee emails works is it's a whole new account separate from your email. Okay? It goes through the town server, and it's a whole separate account. So what you have to do is get a hold of Jennifer. She will assign you a password and a Warrant Finance Committee number, and then you will receive all the emails like everybody else does. Now, if you don't want to do that, you can request hard copies of everything, which would be mailed to you through the town the town administrator would do that. They would mail hard copies if you don't want to use the email. It's completely up to you, Joe, how you want to do it.
Do you want me to decide now?
Well, you don't have to.
No, why don't we, you want to just set up the email account, like what you just mentioned?
With Jennifer, yeah.
Yeah.
And now, with that being said, as most of you should know, if my email went out at all, my Warrant Finance email isn't working. I've spoken to the town administrator a couple of times about it. She showed me up here that all my emails are there and everything, and on my computer I have none. I have no history, I have nothing. She sent me a new password to change the password in the account and start over. That didn't work. I got a couple of emails from her and my old email, and when I set up the new one, it didn't work. So she thought it might be my laptop. So I had my daughter-in-law set up a account on a different device, and it still didn't work. So, until that gets straightened out somehow, what I'll be doing is sending emails from my personal email to the Warrant and Finance Committee server. So it will go to all the Warrant and Finance Committee members. But when you send something out to somebody, I'm not so sure I'm gonna get it. So I'm still fighting with this, and I just don't know what to do. Leslie?
I was able to get into my account. However, there's 300 emails on my account in no chronological order. So the emails that were sent out about this setting up the meeting for us is buried in the middle of all of those emails from 2019, 2020, 2021, and unless I actually go through every single page to look for new ones,
All right,
it's just not doable.
yeah, Joyce?
Buck has had to go into After 5 hosting, which is the hosting server part of, because it's webmail. We have webmail.
Right, not email, I had webmail.
And it's After 5 is hosting. And he had to go in there, and they literally this morning sent us 2 pages of instructions on how to get in, create an app on your phone, so you can just go to that app and you should be able to have your...
Will it be
Should
in chronological order?
You have to set that up that way.
I looked everywhere through all the different settings that I could find on that, and I could not find a setting to change the order of the emails.
That web server is not exactly friendly, user-friendly by any shape.
No, I mean...
My personal feeling is that the selectmen are requiring us to use this. They should make it user-friendly. We suggested a long time ago for another committee to use Gmail, because all of us know how to use Gmail, but they didn't want to do that.
Well,
Joyce?
on a previous committee, I actually had to drive over to the webmaster's house and give him my phone, which he had for several hours. And he set up the account for me, gave me a special, it was like puppy dog something or other server, and it was just a different server. And when I would get an email, it would bark. But, I was so grateful that he got it working. I didn't care that it barked. I mean, I thanked him for at least giving me, but I think what I will do as secretary when Dennis says, okay, I want this to go out, until we are all on the same warrant, like I'm Warrant and Finance number 2 at actonmaine.org. I will probably break rules, but I will send not only to that address, but to your address. And it will be up to each one of you. If you don't want business emails in your personal account, delete them. But until I know everybody is getting everything, I'll send them to both addresses. Tom, I'm not sure if you're W and...
1.
I thought you were. It was actually the way we were elected in.
Oh.
You were first, I was second, I saw that. But, it's Warrant and Finance 1 at Acton, Maine, and I will also send one to your email address, your personal.
Dennis?
We have had, go ahead, Tom.
Given these issues, I think it's appropriate to send the town administrator notice that because of these issues with the email system we're having, that we're being forced to use alternative email until it gets fixed. And I would document what these issues are, and I would let them know that until they get fixed, that we're forced to use alternative emails.
We can do that. I'll get
That
with
was-
Joyce.
That was done in the past.
Yes.
But at least they've been notified. so-
They've been notified several times in the
Oh, okay.
past.
But we'll do it
You know,
again.
Again, they said, it was, they were talking about changing, the server, or, the
Hosting,
hosting, yeah. And, that never came to fruition. It fell through the crack. So, we can voice our concerns with the current, webmail, that we are supposed to use for all town business. But beyond that, you're barking in the wind.
it doesn't mean we shouldn't.
No, I didn't say we shouldn't.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
All right, out of respect to them.
Out of respect, we gotta do it.
Exactly.
But if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. I mean, I don't know what to say, it's out of my
I think you
department.
can.
So we will, have Joyce, or I will, drop the town administrator an email with some of the concerns and see where it goes. That's the best we can do with that.
Can I just, well, before we
Go ahead,
change,
Bernie.
I do not want any emails, using my personal email related, because should any issue arise, freedom of information requests and so forth, I don't want my personal email to become subject to scrutiny. So I want, if this doesn't work, then unfortunately, I didn't get the information and
You get a hard copy.
find a way. Yep. But so please do not
Good
send me
point.
any personal emails related to the board
So,
business.
no board emails to your personal account.
Thank you.
That's
Yep.
fine.
Does anybody else feel that way?
No, but I understand.
I get his point.
No,
It's a
I
good point.
appreciate it.
Yeah, it's a good point, but
Yeah.
there's nothing in my emails.
Yeah.
Excited anyone to do that.
In mine, it'll be messed up with Macy's.
So we're all set up with that. We did the municipal ordinance, we know where that is. The Board of Selectmen's policy concerning the Warrant and Finance Committee. They developed a policy last year. Called it the Warrant and Finance Committee policy. And I explained to them that they couldn't do a policy for the Warrant and Finance Committee because the Warrant and Finance Committee is a separate. So what they actually did was make a policy for, their employees. For the last couple of years, anyway, and historically, this was always done, the Warrant Finance Committee tried to meet with the different departments sometime in November, just to have a conversation, see how things are going, what are they looking at. I mean, they're getting ready to do up their budgets, and but the last 2 years, the selectmen have told their employees they can't meet with us. Road commissioners, fire chief, transfer station superintendent. So that, anyway, they decided they was gonna write up a policy when it comes to the Warrant Finance Committee, which you can also look on the town's website under the policies, and it's there. And it says here, any member of the Warrant Finance Committee may make a request for information of any department in town to the chair of the Warrant Finance Committee. The selectmen have waived the need for the Warrant Finance Committee to vote on said request. The chair of the Warrant Finance Committee shall then contact the town administrator and share the request of his or her fellow committee member. The town administrator will immediately begin working on the request and does not need to wait for selectman approval. Once the information is gathered, the town administrator will email all information requested to the entire Warrant Finance Committee, Board of Selectmen, and any other department head that the information pertains to. If a Warrant Finance Committee member prefers to have a hard copy of the information, he or she can make a blanket request at the beginning of their term to the town administrator to have their documents mailed to them at home. The Board of Selectmen encourages communications between the Warrant Finance Committee, their liaisons, and the various department heads and committee chairs within the town. This policy is intended to ensure all information and documents requested from any town department or committee are distributed to all members of the Warrant Finance. It is not intended to prohibit communications. In an effort to maintain transparency and abide by the Freedom of Information laws, meetings with department heads or committee chairs shall be held in a properly posted meeting where all members of the Warrant Finance Committee are afforded the right to attend. With that policy, they still said that we couldn't meet with the department heads. And we had members last year go to department heads and ask for information, and the department heads were told they could not pass that on to the Warrant Finance Committee, that we had to go through the town administrator would get us that information and give it to us. And the way they've done it the last few years, if you have questions, you submit the questions, and then they'll get you the answers. My issue with that has been, and I'll pick on the two road commissioners. If you meet with the two road commissioners and say you have these 5 questions for them, and so then Jennifer goes to the road commissioners and gets the answers, and then she goes back and gives it all to us. The problem with that is these 5 answers that you get could very well generate other questions. So if it ends up creating other questions, then you go through the same process again, which I think is honestly
Counterproductive.
It's not productive.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And we're all volunteers, and we're just trying to. So we'll see what they say this year when we want information, how it's going to work and all that. But if you see their policy, you can see how it's going to work. I think it's kind of productive myself, but that's just my personal opinion.
Leslie?
So that's the way that stuff works, or it has worked.
Leslie, won't you?
Yes, Joyce.
Yeah,
Leslie, I'm sorry.
yeah, what is MMA's take on this particular issue?
MMA says that and I've got an answer from MMA, the Warrant Finance Committee works for town meeting, and if it's not covered in the ordinance, then it's up to the town meeting to either change the ordinance or change the members.
What's MMA?
Maine Municipal Association, they're
Okay.
the insurance company for all the municipalities, and they have a bunch of lawyers up there that try to protect the insurance companies, so usually that's it. We pay so much a year to have that service to belong to them, but that's their answer when all this stuff was going on. Like I said in the beginning, we're a separate entity, and we work for the town meeting. Let's see.
Is the committee invited, if there are questions for a department, just invited the department head to come in for a meeting?
This is what we tried to do
Because,
in the
right.
last 2 years, and the selectmen one time, it was what, 20 minutes before the meeting, we got notified that it's canceled, and they told the department heads they couldn't come in.
And they canceled our meeting,
And they canceled our meeting.
which is incorrect. Selectmen do not have the authority to cancel our meeting. The selectmen do not have the authority to tell us when we can meet. Dennis last year had to go out and request a what do I want to call it?
Legal interpretation?
Yeah, from MMA. And MMA came back and said, we can meet whenever the chair decides we need to meet. And the selectmen do not have the right to tell us that we can't meet. The selectmen tried to tell us that unless you have a warrant in front of you, there's nothing for you to do. Well, that's not necessarily true. We set our own agenda. We have an organizational meeting that we have to conduct. We have to elect a chair, a vice chair, secretary, decide how this committee is going to operate, because the selectmen do not tell us how to operate. However, again, we are only an advisory committee. We were all elected, but again, we only make a recommendation on warrant articles. Beyond that, and if you read the Warrant and Finance ordinance, it's very specific as to what the duties of the Warrant and Finance Committee are. They try to, and I'm not throwing rocks at the selectmen, but they at times try to hamstring us a little bit.
And this is why I had sent an email to the town administrator about getting the audit. And I don't know how many got it or whatever, but the audit's not gonna be done, I think it was the end of October, per the contract. My personal feelings are, how can you make recommendations on finances unless you know the past history and what the town has for money? I know last year, the undesignated fund balance with revenues and stuff went up about 400,000.
Yeah.
And with all the buildings going on this past year, with the revenues from excise tax and building permits and this and that, I would have no reason not to believe that the revenues probably went up at least that this year, if not more. Which put us last year, a year ago, a little over $2 million in the undesignated fund balance. And if that goes up again, what I figure, I assume it probably will, this past year, we'd have close to $2.5 million, which is an awful lot of money. And what that tells me is that we're being overtaxed, because it's not being contemplating the revenues and stuff. They're underestimating every year what the revenues are by a considerable amount of money. And the only way you're gonna know that is by the audit. And that'll give you a clear understanding of what we need or what we should be doing. Tom?
In terms of the size of the undesignated fund balance, to me, that's there for contingency.
It's supposed to be 3 months' worth of bills.
Okay. that's a reasonable number, it seems, but it's also there to fund capital improvements.
No.
Well, that's what it's supposed to be.
Well, I mean, if you're going to have capital expenditures in the future, the extent to which you know what those are, then you consider what you have today in fund balance, in reserve funds, and what you might need to add to that in order to provide for the funding of ongoing capital
I
renewal.
agree with you 100%.
And so that, to me, is the basis for how you size that fund.
But-
And you may be right, Dennis, maybe it's too large and we've overtaxed.
And I'm gonna tell you why I say that. Because our biggest expense in this town, obviously, is the school.
Yeah.
You know, and that's not a negative thing about the school. That's our biggest expense. Our fiscal year ends June 30th. We have 2 months a year, July and August, that the amount of salaries we're paying at the schools is very limited. You're paying maintenance staff, you know, the county staff, the superintendent, like that. So the payroll for the school for those 2 months is greatly reduced. So when they go back to work in September and you start paying them again, reality is this big bill is only 6 weeks before you start collecting property taxes. The auditor would love to see 3 months' expenses in the undated fund balance. The town never used to do that. The town used to borrow money twice a year, $500,000 twice a year to finish out whatever they had to do. And I didn't like borrowing money. So when I was a selectman 10, 12 years ago, we sharpened the pencils and didn't pay some bills near the end. We obviously got paid the payroll, but CMP didn't get their money for a month. Different things like that, and we ended up, we didn't have to borrow any money. And since then, the revenue's been built up more and more and more and more. And I've got no problems with 3 months' bills. But my problem is the anticipated revenues are far, way under budgeted. Way,
I saw that, yeah.
Leslie.
Right, I have a couple of things. Tom, you said something about capital improvements. Well, if we're planning on doing capital improvements, those should be in reserve funds, not in the undesignated fund.
Exactly.
Okay, well, maybe it's, fine. I mean, they're all,
Yeah, I mean, it's but, you know, the reserve
Yeah.
account is for money that's dedicated to a specific purpose.
Okay.
Undesignated would be for, as you said, contingencies.
But that, I think Tom's right, Leslie. That the money that you put into these reserve funds should come from your excess in your undesignated fund balance.
Right, but that's something that, that town meeting should be approving, not just holding that money in an undesignated fund in anticipation of being able to spend it. And in asking for the audit, Dennis, they may, I'll give them the benefit if maybe they're thinking you want the auditor's report, which won't be ready
think I
until
did
the
ask
end
for
of
that.
You did,
October.
Yeah,
But they closed the books December 30th. They should have all of those figures on what was budgeted and what was expended already, and they should be able to give that information to us prior to the auditor's report coming out.
Yeah. And I have no doubt that Michelle has all that information. I just didn't
But, I
ask
mean,
it that way.
perhaps it was they weren't clear on what you were actually looking for. Because I know that the auditor's report is gonna be important, but us having the book closed figures are important for us to get a head start coming up on budget season. Because that's an awful lot of data to comprehend.
Clarification, please. As far as I know, our fiscal year runs from July 1st through June 30th. They do not close books out in December.
No, I know, I understand that. They actually closed town hall, so they could close the books the end of June. So the books were closed.
The books are always closed.
So, but we don't, they're not releasing that
The
information to
information
us.
doesn't get processed in a timely manner. Just like the town report doesn't contain all the information that it should have in it.
So they should have that information available.
And they probably do. And like I said, I asked for the auditor's
I think we're
report.
getting,
If we didn't ask the right question, then we shouldn't be criticizing what the answer was. We need to ask the right question, and then if we don't get the information, then that's a different discussion, I think.
No, I agree, Bernie. As I say, I'm not criticizing.
Well,
I thought the
think
audit was
some
done.
are, and I think maybe we ought to move on or to a new subject,
Yeah.
or rather than just repeating the same criticism of something when they didn't, you know, if you ask me for a pizza and you end up with a hamburger because somebody else said you wanted a hamburger, I mean, you know, Joyce says Dennis wants a hamburger and I come in with a hamburger, but you really wanted a pizza, it's not my fault, she told me a hamburger. I mean, it sounds like that's what happened to me.
No, they did
Potentially.
exactly what I asked for, and I
Okay.
wasn't ready.
That's right.
I would like to ask you to please go back and reread, if you would, the process about speaking with department heads.
Their policy.
Yeah, would you? Because I just want to make sure I understand the whole thing. Thanks.
Which part did you want me to do, the whole thing? Or?
Well, okay, I understand if we want information, we're to go to you, and then you're to go to the town administrator.
Yes.
And then from that part on, please, what happens then?
Let's see. Any member of the Warrant Finance may make a request for information of any department in the town to the chair of the Warrant Finance Committee. The selectmen have waived the need for the Warrant Finance Committee to vote on said request. The chair of the Warrant Finance Committee shall then contact the town administrator and share the request of his or her fellow committee members. The town administrator will immediately begin working on the request and does not need to wait for selectmen approval. Once the information is gathered, the town administrator will email all information requested to the entire Warrant and Finance Committee, Board of Selectmen, and any department head that information pertains to. If the Warrant and Finance Committee member prefers a hard copy of the information, he or she can make a blanket request at the beginning of their term to the town administrator to have their documents mailed to them at their home. The Board of Selectmen encourages communication between the Warrant and Finance Committee, their liaisons, and the various department heads and committee chairs within the town. This policy is intended to ensure all information and documents requested by any town department or committee are distributed to all members of the Warrant and Finance. It is not intended to prohibit communications. In an effort to maintain transparency and abide by the Freedom of Information laws, meetings with the department heads or committee chairs shall be held at a properly posted meeting where all members of the Warrant and Finance Committee are afforded the right to attend. Does that clarify things for you, Benny?
Well, it does, but that last sentence is what I really wanted to get at, which is, to me, that suggests that a department head could come in and meet with us as long as the committee is present.
As long as the selectmen
Let me-
approve
Okay,
that.
I'd like to finish my sentence,
Go
please.
ahead. I'm sorry, Bernie.
It's all right. This practice, I don't know that it's done at all municipalities, but it is consistent with other municipalities I've lived in. And I think that I understand the frustration of we have to ask a question through the town administrator and then it goes and it comes back. Conversely, though, if we were talking earlier about particular bents on what was said or how it was said, you know, if two things. if we're all free to go talk to town employees and department heads and so forth at will, we all choose to do that, they could spend a lot of time talking to 8 different people about the same issue. And how they respond to me might be different in terms of how they respond to you. And so then if I come into the meeting and say, well, I know what they're thinking about this because I talked to them and this is what they said. You're getting my interpretation of what they said. And it may actually differ factually from what they say to someone else on the committee because maybe they don't trust me, maybe they don't like me, or maybe they don't like you. So I do see the value in terms of time management to not having 8 different people feel free to go talk to an employee whenever they want, and to having everything come through the same filter. So I just put that out there for consideration, that I think there may be some positive, constructive reasons for it being done this way. That's all.
Oh,
That I have to say.
I think you're right. There are reasons, because there was people getting this different information. The only issue that I ever had with any of it, Bernie, was if you take your time and you watch past meetings, I try very hard to make sure that everybody has all the information that I have, everybody. And I try very hard to allow everybody to give their opinions and what their thoughts are on things. My issue was, like I said in the very beginning, the last 2 years, the selectmen have refused to let any of their employees come and sit here and have a conversation with us. And that's my only issue with this whole policy thing. I worked very hard to try to send all my emails and everybody's emails to the town administrator and follow the process like they want you to do. And I'm fine with trying to do that. But I don't think it's right that they don't let town employees, department heads, fire chief or whoever, sit down and have a conversation with us, unless they say it's okay.
Well, and
That's my issue.
Okay, and I don't disagree with you. So what I would put out there is, I think the remedy to that is for other people to run for the board that would do it differently, or to make sure that at the meeting that the public knows.
Yeah.
This is the way this is handled and why you think it should be different, but.
I guess that's what I'm trying to do here with
Yeah.
us,
Yeah.
is so everybody understands, where we have so many new members, how it's been working and what some of the challenges are. Tom?
Perhaps one way of handling it, how did you refer to the originating, was it articles that formed this committee? What was it called?
The ordinance.
The ordinance. I suspect you could put a warrant together that would amend those.
Yeah.
And it would describe what the procedure should be for this committee to interact so it can carry out its business with the town employees, and present it to the town. And if they approve it, then it seems to me that gives us the authority to then follow that without consideration by others.
So we'll move on from that. Oh, sorry.
There's only one problem.
What?
The selectmen write the warrant. You cannot put anything on the warrant without it going through the selectmen. That's the one problem, okay?
All right,
We do not write warrants, we don't write articles.
okay.
It's not within our purview.
Joy?
I would just suggest, since this has kind of gone out there, that you all have your phones, go to Google, go to State of Maine law, and I actually did this today. I wish I remembered everything I read. But there is state law on warrant and finance. What your responsibilities are, what your obligations are and what your authority is. And if you can base
Oh, shoot.
what you need,
Excuse me just a minute. Go ahead. Keep going.
okay, if you can base a citizen's petition on state law, then it has to move forward, even if it means calling a special town meeting. So there are remedies.
I agree with you, there are definitely ways.
There are
to get things.
remedies, rather than saying, well, you know, Bernie's not gonna let me play because last time I played ball with him, I broke his bat. We know that's gonna happen, you know. There are remedies that we can move forward on much more quickly than just dissecting. Just a thought.
And I want to be very clear. This is not a criticism of the Board of Selectmen. I am just stating facts on past practices. And, yeah, let's see, I'm gonna pass them down. I'm sorry, I should have got these in the beginning. Got there.
I've got 3, I need one more.
Yeah, like I said, it's not a criticism. I just don't want everybody to think that did I miss anybody?
I've already got that one, that's okay.
Now, this is on the FOI.
What the heck is this thing? Moving on. Jennifer, being the town administrator, said that the law is very clear that as elected officials, that we need to understand under the freedom of access law. We needed to understand that, and there's a page in the back that needs to be filled out and turned back to her. We can, I mean, I've been through all this several times, so it's a lot to read, but we can take it home and go through it and sign it, and drop it off out in the hall. There's a Warrant and Finance Committee mailbox, and if you drop it off in that box, then we'll see how many people have done it, and the ones that haven't, I'll contact them and say that we really need to get that done. I don't really think we should move forward tonight unless the committee really wants to.
You know,
Everybody agree with that?
No,
You don't agree? You want to do it tonight?
no. I have a question for you. As a duly elected board by the town meeting, everything we have to do with is town business. That's the right way to put it, it's town business. Why aren't the books open to us? Why do we have to go through an FOI to get the information we need?
I don't know.
I don't know that we really do. I mean, I cannot believe that a select board or a town administrator would need to go through FOI to get information on things that they need. And being a duly elected board by the town, I'm not arguing any points. I just don't understand why it's necessary because any public record we have is a public record. It should be open to us. And why do you need an FOI for a public record?
Because that's the way,
No, I don't want to go there.
I'm not gonna say that's the way they want it. That's the way the entire world is now.
No, it's not, though.
It's not.
But it's not.
The books are not open, Joyce. The books are never open.
Public
Ever.
information. What do you mean they're not open? Of course they are.
Unless you request it officially, you're not going to get it.
Here's our chairman, why can't he request it? It's public information.
Have you got
should
something
be able to.
specific?
You should be able to go into any place and say, I would like to see the tax book, I'm looking for lot 207, map such and such, such and such, and you should be able to, here it is. It's public information.
But I don't, what's generating your question? Is there something that the committee has asked for that we're told we have to do a FOIA request to get?
Well, the idea that so many hoops, a lot of hoops, Bernie, a lot of hoops to jump through. And why would
I mean, I think this is about us understanding FOIA so that we understand transparency and what people are entitled to that we might not want to give, for example.
well, it might be that,
I mean, the government has to complete this.
it might be that I've been through this before. I just don't see the connection to this particular board, why it is a necessary thing.
Okay, because maybe I misunderstood your question. I thought you were saying or suggesting that you have asked for public records and been denied.
No, I wasn't saying that at all.
Okay, maybe I misunderstood. Because you're saying a public record's a public record.
Well, a public record is
Ask for it.
is truly a public record, isn't it?
Right, so is there a problem that people are asking for public records that they're being told no?
I have no way. Okay, there you go. What does that have to do with us?
I believe the thing says under Maine state statute, all elected officials must comply with this.
I didn't read that.
I believe that's what it says. I could be wrong. I've been wrong many, many times,
Are you sure?
and I'm sure I'll be wrong again.
Joyce is on the very top, first page, number 5. Looks like it was highlighted. Where it says municipal officers, clerks, treasurers, assessors, and budget committee members of municipal governments. They're part of the groups that must complete the training.
Okay, then that puts it in a very different, thank you, Leslie, for pointing that out. I did not see that. I did not see why it had us looking for information. I took this from us looking for information from, who did you use, the road committee? Saying, no, you can't, you got to go through, the town administrator to get the
okay.
information.
Okay.
I took it as another thing in that same vein, and it's, yeah.
see.
Okay, does that make sense?
Yeah, I understand now.
Okay, now with Leslie pointing this out, this is just another piece of bureaucracy that we have to deal with.
Right, they're sent down by the state.
Yeah, thank you.
Sorry.
Nothing to be sorry about.
I am anyway.
Okay,
Well, this also governs public proceedings and creating public records, which we do.
well, that we do.
So that's part of this too.
Okay.
Yeah,
That we absolutely do.
yeah, right.
Next, please.
With that, does anybody, after listening to me tonight, have any questions or concerns, whatever that they want brought forward to the town administrator or something? Any questions? Any?
I'd like you to reframe your question when you asked for the audit.
Yeah.
I would like you to, I'm trying to think of how to phrase this properly, to ask for the budget information, expenditures, budgeted and expenditures.
The treasurer's end of the year report,
End of the year, yes.
is that okay? Wait, no.
I believe
I
that's,
think at this stage, those are probably draft financial statements, if I understand the process. The town administrator, the treasurer has probably drafted a set of financial statements, and the auditors are reviewing those. So, but typically, it's not uncommon for the governing board or finance committees to receive a copy of those drafts prior to the official audit being done. It seems to me that's what you're after.
that's what I'd like to see.
The draft financial statements that they would have prepared that will eventually make their way into the auditor's final report.
Because the official audit report, we know, is not going to be
Yeah,
finished
it's gonna
until
be the end of
October.
October, yeah.
And so, and that's really, I mean, that's a piece that we're going to need, but we'd like to have the
Financial statements,
The draft financial statements.
draft,
That's the term I would use.
from the treasurer.
Presumably, the treasurer prepares those. I assumed that she would.
And what she would
Do you want to say
draft
the
them
date?
for was to present to the auditor.
Yeah, for the end of the, for the fiscal year
Yeah,
that just
as of
ended.
June 30, 2021.
Bernie,
Nope, that's it. I just thought the date was important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
for the year 2021.
Yeah,
June
I think that'll reframe the question to get the information that we actually are looking for at this point.
Yeah. I wasn't aware when I asked for it, honestly, that they had a contract that didn't, till the end of October.
I noticed last year's statements were issued on October 23rd. The auditors issued their opinion on October 23rd, so that gives you a sense that they'll probably do something similar this year.
Yeah, I'm sure it's the same thing, probably the same verbatim contract. So I'll send that. So what do you as the committee want to do about another meeting? Do you want to wait and till we start getting budget stuff in January?
No.
Would you want to hopefully receive the financial statements and maybe the audit, and it'll give you a chance to go over stuff and have a workshop on the finances of last year, and working with the warrant articles that we approved at town meeting, and to see what the...
I think that would be very good, since we do have a number of new members. I mean, there is going to be a learning curve that we want to get ahead of before we actually get into the actual budget season.
Yeah.
So I would rather do that prior, get a good feeling of what we're actually looking at prior to looking at the articles for next town meeting.
Typically, a budget process would have a calendar, and it would lay out, when do you start, what are the various steps along the way? So answering your question, if I had a calendar of, when things will occur, when documents will be ready, that would tell me at what point perhaps we want to start our process.
In the past few years anyway, I'm gonna tell you how it works at the school. That's the easiest for me. Department heads turn in the budgets into the superintendent, hopefully by the end of December.
Okay.
The superintendent looks over the budgets, meets with the departments individually and whatever, and says this is what we can do or what we can't do or whatever. And then he comes up with a plan, whatever for all the different departments, what the dollar amounts, working with the bookkeeper, and they usually start their actual deliberations in February. And hopefully, they have their final vote on them in March for the April town meeting, the special town meeting in April. In that process, we would meet with them
Okay.
and make our recommendations, but we don't make a recommendation on the warrant articles, and, because what we're doing is making a recommendation, really what the school board wants, so we don't make them before they make theirs, you know what I mean? That's the way it works at the school. The town last year, I think budgets were due, and I might be wrong, but I think they were due in January.
I see.
And the departments met with the selectmen, went over the budgets, and the selectmen said what they could have and what they couldn't have and what they were willing to do. And end of February, I believe, any zoning ordinances, or maybe it's the 1st of February, needs to be in, and hopefully we make our recommendations if things go well sometime in April,
I see.
first part of May. That's the way it's done. How they'll do it this year.
So it's really
Tom.
December, January through
Yes.
April is when the bulk of the work is done.
Yeah.
I see.
So with that being said, one thing we didn't do, and I apologize, is,
Here's your calendar.
oh, nice. You're doing good there, Joyce.
Thank you.
I'm proud of you.
Thanks.
You can read that if you wish.
Budget timeline,
Yeah.
fiscal 21-22 budget. Initial request due all departments, social services, Monday, February 1st. Notice of potential ordinance article to town administrator, February 5th. Final ordinance articles due February 26th. Joint meeting, BOS, Warrant and Finance, Saturday, March 6th, or by Zoom. Final Warrant and Finance final recommendations due April 16th. Selectmen sign warrant April 28th. Warrant to be posted April 30th. Town meeting, elections on June 8th. The meeting itself, June 12th, that Saturday, June 12th.
Now, my question is, that timeline was published.
Yep.
Did they meet that timeline?
Yes.
They did, okay.
Well, this was last year's, so.
Right, no, I understand, I understand, that's why I was wondering if they actually, if those deadlines, were
Well,
cast
if you
in
remember,
stone.
because of COVID,
Right.
things did go over a couple of times, realistically, so.
We met the deadline.
My only concern is, and I have, granted, this is my first year on the board, but I do watch, in the past, I have watched the meetings, and I know that there were times when Warrant and Finance seemed to not get the information on a timely basis, and possibly were rushed and pushed to make decisions. Is that true, or is that not true?
I don't think it's been the case in the last few years, do you, Roland?
Yes.
Okay, I was wrong.
As far as I'm concerned, warrant finance is always pushed. I understand, that sometimes there are things that, get in the way as far as, information being provided in a timely manner. But there are times when I think that, it could have been handled better. Do I have any ideas how to change it? No, not really.
Yeah, because I don't want to see us in a position where, information doesn't get to us in time for us to adequately deliberate and do our research and due diligence. That's what I don't want to see.
That's, you know, most definitely. As far as, you know, we're not gonna get any information until after December. You're
Yeah,
just
doesn't
not
sound
gonna
like
get
there is any.
information. Now, do we wanna meet before then? I would say yes, most definitely, you know? I wouldn't be opposed to, you know, having a workshop of us in a month's time. I don't know how y'all feel, but it doesn't bother me in the least, you know? I think the more times that we meet, the more times we discuss things, the better off that everybody will be as far as understanding the process.
Right, and like I said, there's so many new members that
Yeah.
don't know exactly what the process is. I think that it would behoove us to
And I
try to
agree.
get ahead of the curve.
I certainly agree.
It'll streamline the process when it comes crunch time.
Yes.
I mean,
And there will be crunch time.
I mean, if we could, one example would be, I guess, is we could go over last year's warrant